You're listening to Death's Twilight, a podcast novel written by A.J. Levins, performed by the author and the full cast, including Mike Nelson, Kara Pierce Singh, Ryan Lintner, Jeff Fauché, Dave Olfert, Chantal Proud, Trevor Sarju, Rachel Bonyac, Kayla Romaine, Marika Beard, Dan Beard, Dan Levins, Connie Levins, and Joshua Meyer. This podcast is suitable for ages 12 and up and does contain scenes of violence. Listener discretion is advised. Previously on Death's Twilight. In other news, prominent businessman B.J. Narang was found dead in his home Thursday morning by his daughter. Officials do not suspect foul play, and the coroner is listing the cause of death as cancer. Narang is widely known for creating the Panasung Company, which manufactures implantable tracer chips for livestock. Clinical trials began this week on penal territory inmates. Narang's death will certainly halt the continuation of the trials, but having 1/3 of the inmates tagged, data collection will begin next week. Sources from Panasung say they will try and get Narang's work back up and running as soon as possible.
Necessary. This is Control. We have the results of the red belt scan you asked for. Red belt scans picked up radium recurrent quantity 10 minutes ago.
How fast can we get to Crimea, Kozel?
Chapter 5. The M5. December 4th, 2308, 03:16:49. T-minus 1 day, 4 hours, 46 minutes, 23 seconds. To keep Kozel amused while he strategized on capturing Herman, Slade allowed him to watch his Back to the Future Part 2 holofilm. He was completely enthralled, just like Slade hoped he would be. By the time the holofilm had finished, Kozel had fallen asleep. At this hour of the early morning, the M5 was deserted, and Slade let the hover's autopilot do what it was meant to do. It allowed him time to formulate a plan. He accessed I-Corps databanks, searching for information on Kozel. If he was coming along on this mission, Slade needed information on him. Slade quickly found a wealth of information on Dmytro Kozel, his wife Lyuba, and their kids Vasilina and Yakov. He learned that Kozel took bribes to make ends meet, how Lyuba begged him to get out of the system, to take a job in a different field. Slade found the schools that Vasilina and Yakov attended, their grades, classes, and teachers. There wasn't anything there that was out of the ordinary, and only the bribes could be used against him. Kozel was a safe ally, for the moment. Finished that task, he consulted his implanted hard drive, analyzing the pages of the newspapers he'd scanned at the Poltava terminal. There wasn't much. The local news in Poltava was pretty dry. Even the territory pages were relatively bland. He paused on an article detailing a rumored weapons cache in Crimea. The writer theorized that Crimea kept its relative independence from the rest of the territories because the principal had a large weapons cache at her disposal, and she was not afraid to use it. There was a list of 6 names, people who had disappeared because they represented a supposed threat to the principal's rule.
Was Herman in Crimea for weapons? Was he planning on assassinating the principal, like he had tried in 2299?
That made his getting to Crimea that much more urgent. Unfortunately, Slade was still 7+ hours away from him, assuming Herman stayed at the Agora and didn't move. Control would let Slade know if he moved, and where. All he could do now was wait. Kozel snored softly. The hum of the hover was a soothing melody. Slade's eyes grew heavy, and he started to doze. He roused himself enough to set the in-hover alarm for 8 a.m. He'd been up for 21 hours. It was time to sleep. The last thing Slade saw as he succumbed to the darkness was the steady flash, flash, flash of the white road lines as they passed his window. Slade awoke to the sound of harsh rapping on his window. He groggily rolled the window down to see why they had stopped at a checkpoint on their way. Why hadn't the hover alerted Kozel or him to the checkpoint?
What?
The guard looked at him impassively. He said something Slade's chronometer couldn't translate, lowering the bar to block the hover's passage. Slade was furious. This silly, puffed-up border guard thought that he had the right to detain an emissary. He shook Kozel awake.
Kozel, tell this pompous jerk that we don't have time for his stupid attitude.
Kozel fired off some rapid-fire speech, and the conversation continued. After a moment, Kozel turned to Slade.
He says you have no travel documents. He cannot allow you into Crimea.
Are you freaking kidding me? I'm an emissary, for Pete's sakes. I don't need documents. My rank alone is enough to cross any border.
I am very well aware, emissary.
Kozel turned to the border guard again. More conversation ensued, with the guard looking more and more anxious. After a few more moments, Kozel again turned to Slade.
I've asked him how much he wants to let us cross. He says 500 steel royals.
500? Are you freaking nuts? I should get out of this hover and kick his sorry border-crossing head in right now. 500? He's lucky I don't use my boomstick on him.
For emphasis, Slade pulled the boomstick from its sheath. The guard paled visibly, but stood firm at his post. A final round of communication was volleyed back and forth, and Kozel shrugged, hands up in frustration.
He says he has orders, and to please tell you that he cannot let you pass for less than 500. He will be killed if he doesn't bring his superior the bribe.
Slade paused. He certainly didn't want some mercenary thug to kill this man over a bribe he had no control over, but he also hesitated at the large sum of money that the guard was requesting. Punching a few buttons in quick succession on his chronometer, Slade handed the guard a slip of paper.
500 for the bribe.
He nodded, then turned away from the gate which he opened to let them pass. As they drove through the gate, Slade could see the worried look on the guard's face. He certainly didn't want to see them again, that was for sure. Slade only hoped that the bribe bought the man enough safety.
Now to get to the Agora. Kozel, I need you to get us to the Agora as quickly as possible. It's been almost 12 hours now, and though Control told me they'd advise me, I know I'm not the only emissary delivering.
With all haste, emissary.
They sped through the streets of Crimea, sometimes passing so close to the market vendors that Slade could see the look of surprise on their face as they drove past. Kozel twisted and turned, navigating the narrow streets, laneways, and alleys. Makeshift housing jutted from the remains of old stone buildings. Corrugated steel formed roofs and walls meant to shelter the population from the weather. It was quite evident that the principal of this area was less concerned about the citizens than she was of her own welfare. They arrived in front of the hotel, and Slade exited the hover, eager to be free from its confines after such a long journey. The moment his boot touched the cracked pavement of the sidewalk, children, begging for scraps of food, spare change, or clothing, bombarded him. Most people feared the change that an emissary brought, but some people regarded emissaries as benefactors. Slade had almost no small coins, but he distributed them as evenly as he could, promising the children that he would be back as soon as he could to help. He motioned to Kozel, and together they entered the Agora. There was a wide, squat man lounging behind the desk as Slade approached. He saw Kozel and sneered, but as soon as he saw Slade, it was all charm.
Honored emissary, welcome to the Agora. We are pleased that you would choose to grace us with your presence. Shall I have a room prepared for you and your companion?
Actually...
Noble innkeeper, I regret that I have to decline your offer of such esteemed accommodations. My duties as an emissary preclude the necessity to stay in a place so well known as the Agora. Indeed, we are looking for an individual. May we count on your assistance?
Of course, emissary. How can I assist you, noble one?
We are looking for a man by the name of Randy Emery Herman. I have been informed that he has booked a room here. I have a letter for him that I must deliver. Can you direct me to his quarters?
Mr. Herman has indeed checked in. His room is on the 2nd floor.
Fantastic. Can you take us to see him, please?
I'm afraid not, emissary. Mr. Herman has left the Agora early this morning. He did say he would be returning Friday at around lunchtime. I believe he had some business with the principal.
The principal? Crap! We need to move, Kozel. Let's go.
He bolted to the hover and jumped into the driver's side without waiting to see if Kozel was behind him. As Slade pulled away from the curb, Kozel dove through the open passenger side door and pulled it closed.
Not to question you, emissary, but can you tell me why we are in such a hurry?
You mean beside the impending delivery deadline? Herman has in the past tried to assassinate the principal of Alberta Territory. He was ultimately convicted of murdering 3 government officials.
And you think he's after the principal here in Crimea?
I wouldn't put it past him. I need the principal's office.
Right, I'm on it.
Kozel activated his chronometer and dialed the Crimean embassy. Once connected, he identified himself and asked to be patched through to the principal's quarters. When they hesitated, he patched the call to the hover's in-vehicle system. Slade took over.
This is Emissary Slade Meechan, identity 0247893. I'm currently en route to rendezvous with Randy Emery Herman with a mission to deliver a letter. He has previous convictions for murder related to principal and government officials. I believe that his purpose in coming to your office is to cause harm to the principal.
But emissary, the principal and Mr. Herman are related. He is her cousin. You think that he would assassinate his own family?
That one took him by surprise. How had he missed that fact?
Are you sure? I'm not trying to question your knowledge, but...
The principal has confirmed it herself. I have no reason to disbelieve the principal.
Well, as well as you shouldn't. Nonetheless, I'm still coming for my original purpose. Will you be able to detain him until I arrive?
As you know, emissary, any individuals in the principal's care have immunity from all disciplinary actions, regardless of source. That includes the letter.
Herman was either very smart or very foolish. Back in the 80s, a law was passed exempting government officials and their families from the letter. Continuation of government was important for society. Herman was clearly exploiting this law for his own benefit.
You are right again. We don't usually get assignments like Mr. Herman. Thank you for reminding me.
Is there anything else, emissary?
No, thank you again. He's related to the principal? I highly frickin' doubt it. Kozel, start digging. We need to determine the veracity of this statement.
Slade punched his own chronometer and waited for the connection. While he waited, he began to hum the tune from Hey Jude, a track from a group called the Beatles that was recorded almost 250 years ago. It was, in his opinion, the greatest song ever recorded. The call finally connected. The sound transferred to the receiver in his left ear.
Emissary 0247893. This is Control. How can we be of assistance?
Control, I need information. First, I need you to confirm that Randy Emery Herman is related to Principal McDonald.
We'll look into it. Anything else?
That's the main issue. My secondary concern is issuing a letter to someone under diplomatic protection.
It can't be done.
Then, I need you to find a way. I-Corps wants me to deliver this letter, and I intend to. I also need all skills I had yesterday uploaded for use immediately.
Place the hover in a hollow drive, and we will initiate. Not sure what we can do about the immunity issue, though. We'll have to check with Iris.
Make it happen. Auto on. 0247893 out.
Chapter 6. Moscow, Ural Territory, December 4th, 2308, 13:18:19. T-minus 21 hours, 52 minutes, 52 seconds. Hotaru piloted her hover through the pedestrian-filled streets of Moscow. Snow was piled high along both sides of the street, and people struggled to clear the way for her, recognizing her status as a government official. The snow was forecast to continue all week, but Hotaru was only planning on being here for 2 days. Her latest target, a doctor, had been sighted at one of the medical dispensaries in downtown Moscow. She had arrived mid-morning, and her stomach let her know it was unpleased with her extended absence from food. Grabbing a protein pouch from her backpack, Hotaru looked out the window for a landmark. Checking the building beside her, she saw a boarded-up studio. She was close, only 2 more blocks to the hostel she was to stay at. She planned to use her first day in the city to do recon, gather information and intel she would use to capture and deliver a letter to Dr. Hussein Abu Jamal. His work was needed elsewhere. The second day would be entirely for the implementation of her plan and ultimately the delivery of the letter. The windshield wipers swiped rhythmically at the window, clearing her line of sight through the market. She deftly steered around a couple who had just exited a bakery, unaware of her presence. All around her, the earth-colored bricks of the houses and the deep slate of the roof tiles showed Hotaru a vista of buildings built by people who worked hard for their earnings. She stopped her hover at the hostel's address. Getting out of the hover, she scanned the street, looking for any sign of danger. When she was satisfied there was none, she pulled her backpack out of the car, slung it over her shoulder, and entered the building. It smelled of unwashed people and years of poor maintenance. The floorboards creaked under her feet as she approached the check-in desk, which itself looked like it needed a coat of paint several decades ago. Approaching the desk, she could see a man with wild, unkempt white hair looking up at her. He was in an undershirt, and she could see signs that his last meal involved lots of gravy. When he spoke, his voice was like gravel rubbing on sandpaper.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the hostel. How long will you need a room?
3 days, please.
Will you require food and drink?
Yes, please. Are you able to give me directions?
The innkeeper leered up at Hotaru, who was much younger than he was. She could only guess what was on his mind. It wouldn't matter, though. If he made a move toward her, she'd snap his wrist before he got within 30 centimeters of any part of her body.
I can. Where are you looking to go?
I need to find a doctor.
His expression changed imperceptibly, but Hotaru caught the look. Fear. Fear of disease and sickness.
I'm not sick. He's a friend of mine.
At this, the innkeeper relaxed and asked for his name. Hotaru handed him her tablet with Abu Jamal's name on it. The innkeeper brightened, laughing, and gesticulated wildly, pointing down the street.
This doctor friend of yours. He has an office down the street, 2 blocks. You picked a good hostel, yes?
Hotaru nodded, smiling herself. This time she had gotten really lucky. The innkeeper handed her a key.
Room number 6. Top of the stairs, last room on the right, down the hall. Enjoy your stay, emissary.
Hotaru froze, looking at the innkeeper, who just raised a single finger to his lips in the universal sign for,
I won't tell anyone. Your secret is safe with me.
She nodded her thanks, and then took off upstairs to get settled for reconnaissance. It took a few seconds to get the key to work in the lock, but as she opened the door, Hotaru Kagami was surprised. Behind the scratched, faded door was a room that rivaled a palatial dwelling. A huge 4-poster bed dominated the west wall. A pristine white canopy adorned the top of the bed, and a bedspread of gold, scarlet, and black covered the mattress. There was at least a dozen pillows near the headboard, and the bed had been turned down, as if expecting a guest. 2 large brown fabric chairs flanked the bay window, which looked out onto an impressive street scene, showing factories, retail shops, and residential dwellings alike. Though only on the 2nd floor, the view left Hotaru with the impression of being much higher up. She plopped her backpack on the bed, sending pillows bouncing to the ground around the bed, and headed into the washroom. She had traveled a whole day. It was time to get clean. A large tub took up the left-hand side of the expansive washroom, which was appointed in ivory and gold. A glass-enclosed shower stood beside the toilet and bidet. Scarlet towels and cloths that matched the linens on the bed were arranged neatly on the white marble counter. She began to undress, setting the shower's digital temperature gauge to 41 degrees, just like her shower back at the college. She set a towel on the floor, then grabbed a bath sheet and hung it on a hook beside the shower. Opening the glass door, she stepped into the steaming water with a sigh. Quickly washing her hair, she applied conditioner and reached up to grab a rose-shaped shower poof from an alcove just above her sightline. There was a selection of soaps and glass bottles on a shelf at waist height, each decorated with a picture of the main scent contained within the cleaner. She chose one with a bundle of brown pods and a pale yellow-orange flower. Vanilla. As she lathered up, she kept mental score of the various scars and injuries earned in her career as an emissary. A 5-centimeter scar near her left ankle from a bad fall during a chase where her target had jumped off a second-story roof, and her after him. She saw the near imperceptible mark on her right knee from reconstructive surgery. A crazed man had shot her while trying to escape. The bullet had shattered her patella instantly and caused major damage to the cartilage behind it. It hadn't stopped her from delivering. Despite all the medical attention she received at the college, she still walked with a slight limp when tired or injured. She hated it, but if the college couldn't fix it, no one could. Next came the memory of a broken pelvis from when a woman had hit her with her hover while trying to protect her husband. Again, the unstoppable Hotaru delivered, but at a huge cost. She had missed her quota that year by 3 letters. There was no punishment, but only because she had spent nearly 3 months in the college's medical bay. From the waist up, she was nearly perfect, as far as injuries went anyway. For some reason, people figured if they could stop her moving, they were safe. They were wrong. Hotaru delivered, no matter the personal cost. Washing her left arm, she was careful to avoid the chronometer interface chip implanted into her forearm just above the wrist. The actual device hooked into this chip using nanotechnology to allow her access to communication, scheduling, and mapping interfaces that mirrored the abilities of her tablet. Rinsing her arm in the soft stream of hot water, she transferred the poof to her other hand and washed her right arm. As she came to her elbow, she paused, looking at the soft tissue of the crook of her elbow and the small 6-pointed scar from the implantation of her BESE chip. She remembered the curious looks from the residents as she walked through the hallways of the dwelling in the Lat Phra district of Bangkok. What was this newcomer doing in their building? This was her final test before ascension to Alpha. In her hands was a tablet. No target information this time, only a map showing the route to a GPS tracker on her destination. She walked down the long hallway, passing dozens of shoji doors on her left and right. The tablet chirped steadily as she closed in on her target, and the countdown in the lower left corner of the tablet read 5 minutes. She looked up, seeing a shoji door in front of her. She pocketed the tablet and reached out, sliding the door to the left, and stepped into the room. Slumped over in the chair was a man dressed in a business suit. His tie had been loosened, and the top button of his white shirt was undone. His shoes were off, scattered haphazardly in front of the chair. His dark hair was messy, and a bottle of liquor rested on its side, empty. The glass tumbler had fallen to the floor, shattering upon impact with the slate tile floor. She cautiously moved closer to the man. A double chirp from the tablet drew her attention, and she pulled it out. The target's dot had been replaced by a flashing red X. This was the man, no doubt about it. Her tablet confirmed it.
Sir, can you hear me? Sir, my name is Hotaru Kagami. I am an emissary, and I have come to deliver a letter. Do you understand me?
The man grunted, shaking his head in indifference. The effects of the alcohol had subdued him to the point where he no longer cared.
Sir, I'm going to need you to take this tablet.
One hand lifted from the man's lap in response. Give me the tablet. A triple chirp, and Hotaru checked the chronometer. 1 minute. Activating the fingerprint and retinal scanners, she stepped closer to the man and placed the tablet in his hand. He took the tablet into both of his hands, and the fingerprint scanner chirped. A message appeared on the screen, but the man seemed not to see it. She would have to help him. Bending down, she knelt beside the man, helping him to steady the tablet. The screen read, "Look here." She lifted the man's head and looked straight into the eyes of her father. She froze, mouth open in terror.
No, Father, not you. Why?
How could they do this? She thought of a dozen ways to make an escape from them both, but they would both be hunted for the rest of their lives. Hotaru took the tablet, staring at it, trying to activate it for herself. Nothing. She placed it back in her father's hands and tilted it toward her when the Look Here screen was active. She saw the flash of light from the laser. Hope. She could save her father. Still, there was no effect.
20 seconds.
She smashed the tablet onto the slate floor, but it bounced. Not even a scratch. Again and again she tried, with the same result. Tears began to flow in streams down her cheeks, and her breath came in gasps between sobs.
10 seconds.
Yeah, I'll save you, I promise.
Through blurry vision, she accessed the tablet's menus, searching for a way to verify the identity of the attended target. There had to be a mistake, but every answer came back, her father.
5 seconds.
Time slowed instantly. Hotaru could hear every one of her heartbeats, every breath, every sob. She could feel the individual tears as they fell down her cheeks. She looked at her father and saw resignation in his eyes behind the glaze of the alcohol. She would not give up.
4 seconds.
She frantically tapped the tablet, accessing menu after menu, program after program, in her hyper-aware state in an attempt to shut the tablet down. A warning beep from the tablet that felt like it lasted a minute. She screamed again, a wail of pure despair. She had accessed every file on the tablet. There was nothing. No back door. No emergency failsafe. No turning back. She smashed it one more time against the floor, hoping in vain that it would break this time. She suddenly felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned her head and looked into her father's eyes.
2 seconds.
Her father took the tablet from her. A chirp from the fingerprint recognition program. A flash of color from the screen.
1 second.
He looked down at the tablet and froze, falling off the chair and into Hotaru's lap. The tablet fell out of his hand and skittered away under the table. It let out 4 quick chirps, and the screen turned green. Cradling her father's head in her lap, Hotaru wept. Huge cries escaped her throat, and her back spasmed with racking sobs that could no longer be contained. She wasn't even aware when the 2 burly men in white medical scrubs entered the room and closed on her. They reached down, helping her to her feet, which would not support her. She fell to her knees, arms held up by the men.
Beta 0256773, we need you to come with us. It seems that there has been a case of smallpox in this building, and we need to vaccinate you against any possibility of infection.
Leave me alone!
She fell to the ground again and started crawling back to her father. She noticed small reddish spots on his arms that weren't there a minute ago. She looked back to the men who had raised masks over their mouths and donned goggles. Another look to her father showed that he was sweating, and more red spots appeared on his face. She slowly rose to her feet, tears coursing down her cheeks. There was a deep pit within her that would never be filled, an empty spot where her father had been for the past 21 years of her life. The men led her out of the dwelling and down the hall to the elevator. Hotaru Kogami was led to a sterile, pale green hallway in the basement of the college. Naked bulbs hung from a wire strung the length of the ceiling. It was cool down here, and she could smell the damp odor of wet concrete. She should be happy, she supposed. She had achieved alpha status, and wasn't that what it was all about? All the years of schooling, training, and pretend missions? She would move now into the college. She was taken care of for the rest of her life. Any money that she earned from her duties was hers to spend as she saw fit. But at what cost? She would never see her father again. The men escorted her into a room outfitted with a bed and racks and shelves containing bottles filled with various colored liquids. A woman was waiting for her, syringe in hand. The syringe was filled with a red liquid that looked a lot like blood. Hotaru stopped, dragging her heels, but the strength of the men was no match for her in this condition. The man on her right tore her shirt at the shoulder, ripping the sleeve clean off of the garment. He twisted her arm, exposing her bicep and forearm to the doctor. She took Hotaru's wrist gently in her hand and looked straight in the eyes. As she did so, she raised the syringe, and Hotaru could see the tip of the needle had 6 barbs.
I'm not gonna lie to you, Beta 02567773. This is gonna hurt a lot, but afterward, you'll feel much better.
The doctor plunged the needle into the crook of Hotaru's arm, and she screamed in agony. Her body's natural reaction had been to bring her forearm up to her bicep in an attempt to protect the tender area that had been violated. Instead, it forced the needle deeper into the crook of her arm, and she watched, still screaming, as the doctor depressed the plunger. As the syringe was withdrawn, blood began to pool, and the doctor quickly pressed gauze to the wound. Satisfied, the doctor headed out of the room, turning back to the two men.
Make sure she's good, and if not, you'll know what to do.
They nodded. Hotaru stopped screaming. Her face went blank, but the man closest to her noticed a glint in her eye that wasn't there before. As the door shut, Hotaru heard the deadbolt lock and knew what was next. She moved with lightning-fast reflexes to the back wall, grabbing the oxygen cylinder. It was the last thing the two men saw. Covered in spatters of blood, Hotaru Kagami, Alpha 02567773, exited the room and walked confidently out of the building. Wrapping the towel around her body, Hotaru walked back into the bedroom and pulled a kimono from her pack. Swapping it for the towel, she fastened the belt and walked to the window. She watched as the snow continued to blanket the roofs of the building around the hostel. Night was coming quickly, and she needed to make initial contact with Abu Jamal. Drying her hair quickly with the towel, she dressed, layering for the cold temperatures outside. She fished a parka from the pack and donned it, feeling the fur of the hood tickle her cheeks. Next came fur-lined gloves and a pair of mirrored sunglasses. While it seemed silly to wear sunglasses at night, this particular pair had some upgrades that would allow Hotaru to monitor Abu Jamal's vitals and attach a tracer dot. As she exited the room, she found a note that had been slipped under her door while she had been showering. She bent, picking up the paper and flipping it over to read the message.
Hope you like the accommodations. It is available for your use beyond the 2 days we agreed upon at no additional charge to you or the college. Consider it a favor from one who was on the inside. Igor, 02176669.
She tucked the note into a pocket on the inside of her parka and headed out to find Dr. Hussein Abu Jamal. Thank you for listening to Episode 3 of Death's Twilight. We hope you enjoy what you're hearing, and we'd love to know what you think. Drop us a line at facebook.com/The Meechan Chronicles. Stay tuned for Episode 4, launching May 17th, 2014. See you all soon.